Okay, folks, we're live. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to try to control myself and get to most, if not all, of this important news that I have in front of me today. And to try to be calm and not get too excited so that I can engage in some higher brain function here and actually break down some of the subtle nuances of what we face in this society. It is Tuesday, the 18th day of January, 2011, and we've got Dr. Andrew Wakefield joining us in studio in the last hour. He's an Austinite. And of course, the media has been demonizing him for years, claiming he's the only person to ever make a link between vaccines and brain damage. They have a cover name for it, autism. The whole basket of disorders and problems. And they keep hoaxing and claiming that he's been discredited and proven to be a fraud. Then when you read the fine print, they admit, well, we can't replicate his study. Or, well, he used his own patients. A lot of people use their own patients in studies. It's very similar to the hoax we saw a few weeks ago claiming that the shooter in Tucson was a conservative, and that free speech was to blame, or that this radio show or my films were to blame. Just another hoax. And they do this constantly. They just make declarative statements. And this is a big deal because when you look at even the British government this year, now last year, 2010, after the flu season of 09, 010, they came out and said a tenfold increase in seizures in children that have taken the flu shot. And that was London Telegraph, BBC, you name it. And a massive increase in narcolepsy, a massive increase in people getting different disorders, seizure disorders, directly connected to the vaccine. Well, what is Dr. Wakefield saying? Dr. Wakefield is saying in his studies it showed that it's causing some type of autoimmune response in the brain, which is what Dr. Russell Blaylock, brain surgeon, has said here, and countless others from their own research and other research that's been done by prestigious organizations. So what they'll do is they will cherry pick one doctor to single them out and claim it's all discredited so they can just say, hey, it doesn't matter if it was 1 in 25,000 people in 1980 getting autism, and now it was 168 a few years ago. Now they're saying it's 1 in 87. They're saying it could be 1 in 50 if the trend continues. Then if it continues on, it's exponential, hyperbolic. It'll be 1 in 10. And then they spin it and say, oh, this is overdiagnosis. This is children making it up. And certainly there are psychologists and psychiatrists and neurologists and people who will just take a kid that's got some quirks and call it autism, when really, they're just eccentric or have something like Asperger's, which is, again, just a scientific name for a certain type of, individual who kind of focuses in on things myopically. They're putting labels on everything. Some of it's got some truth to it. A lot of it doesn't have truth to it. But the issue is, let's say there's some over-reporting. That doesn't give you from 1 in 25,000 to 1 in 168, or 1 out of 2,000 to what we see today. And you go to the park, you go to public places, there are kids who are so autistic they're not even in this reality all over the place. They're not faking that. Okay, we'll be right back. Another broadcast, another transmission. It is Tuesday, the 18th day of January 2011. The founder of the Eagle Forum, conservative icon Phyllis Schlafly, will be joining us for the last 30 minutes of the next hour today. I saw a Fox News article yesterday about how, the Tea Partiers are being taught their place by the mainline Republicans. And Cheney is saluting Obama for learning the ways of Bush. And it's reportedly going to be business as usual, and the Democrats and Republicans coming together to fleece the American people with a value-added tax on top of the income tax and all the carbon taxes and the rest of it. More and more, it looks like the Republicans might try half-heartedly to repeal government takeover of health care. They'll lie about it and say it's communist and socialist, which would be bad when really it's fascist, written by the insurance companies. If Republicans actually told the truth, like Ron Paul does, and said this was written by the insurance companies, corporate fascism, the left would shut up, and the right would have an epiphany and realize that mega corporations are the ones creating and financing the big government to give their oligopolies and monopolies and combines power to consolidate vertically. But the Republicans are saying, yeah, we're going to try to repeal the communist health care in the House. And I get to hear the neocon talk show host every day saying Obama's a Marxist and he's a communist. Not in the sense that these conservatives are claiming. They don't want to take your property and distribute it to the poor. They want to take your property and give it to themselves. They want you to be a feudal serf, and then they've got an army of domesticated welfare people who they now recruit to be TSA and police officers and spies. That's where they're getting their recruits, and military people who are trained as attack dogs to sick the middle class. Sick gun owners, sick someone with a cowboy hat on, sick crackers, as Chris Matthews would say. Crackers are bad. White people are inherently evil. I mean, it's all a system where the police are trained to, blacks must all be criminals, get them. White crackers are evil, get them. You know, just everybody's evil, but your loving bankers up on the mountain, way up above us in the heights, lovingly making the grass grow, making the sun shine each and every single day. So Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who they're trying to demonize and discredit, he is an academic gastrointestinal doctor, and he did amazing research that's been proven to be correct over and over again, dealing with autism and autoimmune response and these antibodies in the intestines of the autistic children that he tested. We've had so many other medical doctors on to back up what he, a medical doctor, is saying as well. They're doing this big hoax right now to try to discredit him, claiming he's been discredited with no proof. British researcher Wakefield defends link between vaccines and autism. British researcher holds true to his study despite claims of falsified data. Remember Gary Webb? He went to the hearings of Ricky Ross and others. It came out that the CIA was shipping in the narcotics. Later, the government had to admit that in the 1997 CIA hearings in Congress with the CIA Inspector General. There's just countless cases of aircraft crashing run by the U.S. government filled with heroin and cocaine. Now in the year 2010, 2011, they admit on Fox News that our troops give the fertilizer to the Taliban to grow the opium, and record levels are pouring out. But they gave the Pulitzer Prize to Gary Webb. They gave him the Pulitzer Prize. Then they ran this hoax saying he had lied and he'd been discredited and not all of his research was right. And then the San Jose Mercury News got rid of him. So he was writing the magnum opus on the subject with even more proof. And he was telling me, I'll come on your show soon, Alex. I'll come on your show soon. I've got all the proof. It's incredible. And they came to his house and shot him twice in the head. And he told Ricky Ross on the phone to him in prison. He told his friends his house was being broken into. He'd move because of it. He'd come home and men in suits would be climbing down the drainage pipe from his two-story house. And he told Sela Castillo that, former DEA agent. He told others that. And then the usual suspects went on air and said, oh, it's quite normal to shoot yourself twice in the head. And Sela Castillo and Ricky Ross, they're lying. He didn't say that. He lived in a one-story house, spinning the fact that he'd moved because of the break-ins to another town from the two-story to the one-story. See, they always play little semantical games, counting on you not paying attention. They always play these little games, with things. So ignore the forest of evidence. They'll go and show you one fallen over tree that you never even talked about and discuss, oh, look at it, it's fallen over. Is this little area really a forest? It's kind of a small 100-square-foot meadow here. He's lying. We're not in a forest. We're in a meadow. And you're like, but we're in a forest here, and this is a tiny meadow within the forest. See, they play little semantical diversion games, distraction games with people, and it works like a charm. And so I can't tell you how many neocons and people sent me emails over the year of comments going, oh, Gary Webb, that was discredited. None of it was discredited. None of it. What did Popular Mechanics do? They came out and did their debunking and said there was only one interception of a jet aircraft in the year preceding 9/11/2001, September 11th. And I was going through their book on debunking, and it was just all disinfo. But on that one point, I even called into a talk show that the head of Popular Mechanics was on, James Meggs, because he will not come on this show or any other show and debate. He has to have it, be a one-sided, his side only, because he can't debate. And I said, here's the Reuters article, here's the date, where the spokesman for NORAD, the Air Force major, 4 months before 9/11 gave a press conference. Here's another article, and gave the headline, where he, 8 months before 9/11, gave a speech and bragged about the 156 times that they'd intercepted aircraft in the year before, including Payne Stewart, and you say it only happened one time, that it was Payne Stewart, and that the Air Force rarely intercepts, and that the fact that the jets were launched late and told to fly at almost stalling speed, the point is, they just put out a book saying that there had been one interception in the year before when there had been over 150. And they just state these things like they're facts, like we're supposed to just accept it and receive it, and they're counting on us doing that. Or a lot of times they'll just ridicule. They'll say, oh, I think it's kooky to think that fluoride is bad for you. It's in comedies, it's in movies, it's in dramas where the crazy bad neighbor who's evil or a child abuser or a terrorist is into things being in the water. I mean, I can't tell you how many TV show plots I've seen clips of on YouTube where they're looking for the mastermind who wants to launch the bio attack in New York, and they find out it's a crazy professor who's concerned about chemtrails and fluoride in the water, and so he's a crazy man who wants to blow up children. And it doesn't even make sense. It's just the message is, if you are warning people about poisons in the water and food, you want to blow up children. It's just nonsensical, mindless propaganda at a bestial level. But I am digressing. I'm going to come back and get into the news. I just thought I would talk about Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who's going to be in studio with us today. Look forward to that. I've interviewed him several times over the years over the phone, but now he's going to be in studio with us today. And I know he's been doing national TV rounds. He just kicked off yesterday. What was he on yesterday? Good Morning America. But this won't be sound bites. He'll be able to really break down this hoax. I mean, they've been saying this about him for years, and they say he's discredited. He launched a hoax. And you read the article, well, there's a few questions about some of the ways he conducted the test. They don't even really say what. They just say he's discredited. Oh, Gary Webb, a Pulitzer Prize winner, he's discredited. If memory serves, though, they didn't take his Pulitzer Prize. But here we are 12, 14 years after his Pulitzer Prize and the big firestorm that caused, and all the other investigative reporters, publishing their reports. They sure got him, didn't they? They said he was discredited, and they shot him twice in the head with a shotgun. Man, I mean, I hope they don't blow up my car in my front yard, and the police are so corrupt that they tell everybody, oh, his car just caught on fire, like that woman in D.C. a week ago. ahead of the big energy merger. Or Benazir Bhutto, they machine gunner on national TV, and it's all over the foreign press, her being shot, but our news says she fell and hit her head. That's what they think of us here in this country. And I think of all the other hoaxes they run, where they murder people. And remember all the Clinton people who would get shot repeatedly, and they'd be found with their arms and legs, and in some cases heads cut off, in trash dumps in one case, and the Arkansas medical examiner, Fahmy Malak, would rule it a suicide. And this is all part of just setting the precedent that they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, right out in the open, and nothing is done to them. Okay, coming up, NASA's Hansen says impose Chinese totalitarianism on America. We've got the Stuxnet virus attack. Russia warns of Iranian Chernobyl. We've got this David Rockefeller video by a great InfoWars listener. They're in Chile. We want to salute them. That's coming up. In this short segment, I'm just going to read headlines. Coming up the next, I'm going to dive into them, get into this incredible confrontation in Chile by a YouTube blogger with David Rockefeller coming in from the airport with the big media magnate who owns the biggest share, from what I read, of South American media, Mr. Eastman. And it's David Rockefeller in a wheelchair, the grand overlord of the New World Order, who he is looking like he's getting a bit senile, laughing at the guy while he screams at him, "We're not your slaves. We know you want to carry out eugenics and population reduction. We know that you're into all of this tyranny. Get out of Chile. You will fail in English and Spanish." Beautiful. And then I was heartened to see when I went to his YouTube channel that he's got translated into Spanish a whole bunch of my films and my show. A lot of folks do that in Chinese, Spanish, German, Japanese, Russian. I salute all of you, and we are all brothers and sisters together across the world for liberty and freedom against the global corporate board. So the most amazing confrontation footage I've ever seen with David Rockefeller or any other globalist for that matter. We Are Change has done a great job with Luke. You know, I've done it from a distance at Bilderberg, but this was powerful. This was the grand slam, the hole-in-one, the royal flush, whatever you want to call it. I've never seen better. The next most powerful would have to be We Are Change Chicago, who absolutely dominated and owned, to use a internet parlance or nomenclature, owned Al Gore a few years ago. And of course, that's had over 1 million views on YouTube alone. Okay, I said I'd get to the news, and I started already getting into that video that's coming up. And then a really creepy PBS trailer for Frontline, getting into something we told you about 10 years ago, but at least now they admit it. How the face scanning cameras tie into the license plate readers. They've gone up nationwide, and they're now introducing this to the slaves. Remember, more than 14 years after I exposed, because it was public, the Telecommunications Act dealing with spy networks, spy grids, how they were listening to all our phones, emails, faxes, with AI keyword systems with no warrants. Frontline a few years ago had a big special, and it was breaking, it was groundbreaking, it was, oh my goodness gracious, gumdrops. Bush is so evil. Obama comes in, slams the pedal all the way down to the floor, and the left goes, rendition, secret torture, torturing people's kids in front of their parents, expanded wars. We love it. It's like Ron Silver reportedly, when Clinton was getting sworn in '93, was by Hillary going, look at those planes, look at that military. What are they doing flying over here? And she's like, relax, we run things now. Those are our planes. And Ron Silver went, ugh. That was actually in the newspapers. He was, the press saw it and wrote it down. He was, what are they flying jets over? That's the enemy, U.S. military. Just so anti-American, anti-military. And Hillary's like, don't worry, Ron. We've taken over. Those are ours now. I digress. Here is Dick Cheney from the Hill today. Cheney Obama has learned that Bush policies were right. President Obama has learned from experience that some of the Bush administration's decision on terrorism issues were necessary, according to former Vice President Dick Cheney. I had a Freudian slip. He was the president. So we're going to be getting into some of that. If anybody had any doubt that WikiLeaks is a CIA front, Julian Assange may be a useful idiot. In fact, I believe he is. But if there was ever any doubt, this new Tunisian stuff, targeting Tunisia and the WikiLeaks, now they're going to release 2,000 prominent rich people who've got Swiss bank accounts. And you better believe George Soros isn't going to be on the list. He's heavily involved financing WikiLeaks through his right-hand man who basically runs it. And they're now going to burn some, low-level billionaires and millionaires. And that's all part of the OECD global movement to gut the Swiss bank accounts of the lower-level nouveau riche. And because that's an official UN policy, and he always follows UN State Department policy. So ex-banker says he's giving WikiLeaks files on the rich. Remember, almost a year ago, our inside sources said it would be banking by the end of it. See, they can't have NSA or NATO or Infopol 9 stuff they've recorded and all the data and all the know your customer. The government's got live access to all your bank accounts in live time. That's now admitted. They can't just release it to burn their enemies. It has to be leaked by the traitor Assange, or for some, the hero Assange. And then they juxtapose it in their psychological warfare model to then use Assange to also crack down on free speech on the internet. So then you're forced to support Assange in what he's doing, even though it's the CIA, because within their master template, if you don't support him, then they have a victory against free speech. See the mastermind control?
There ain't no easy way out. Hey, I will stand my ground.
And I won't.
And I won't back down.
Okay, let me just do this. And I've never succeeded. I always say I'm going to read every headline so you get an idea of what I'm seeing every day and then go back into it. But I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to start back over where I was. Cheney, Obama has learned that Bush policies were right. The Hill. AP, ex-banker says he's giving WikiLeaks files on the rich. Swiss lawmakers angry at alleged U.S. spying program. Julian Assange vows to reveal tax details of 2,000 wealthy people. Yeah, outsiders. Continuing. NASA Hansen imposed Chinese totalitarianism on America. With the actual quotes. PrisonPlanet.com, Kurt Nimmo. Here's the Washington Times, same story. China-style dictatorship of climatologists. NASA's Hansen prefers rule by decree to fight global warming. That is the new official talking point by literally thousands of these academics. These people are authoritarians. Continuing, Bill Gates wants to register all babies on planet for vaccines so that forced vaccination can be carried out. To save them, of course. Continuing here with the news, Sudan next to succumb to Bernanke's inflationary experiment as country threatens revolution over surging food prices. Fox News, traveling man's gun arrest appealed to Supreme Court. They admit in this article that his gun was completely legal, but that the police still took it and still arrested him. And that ties into some other news I have here where they're just arresting people who neighbors see with guns. And it's always the same, a dare rifle, a shotgun, a handgun, repair people in your house. The police come, you go to jail. They hyperventilate in press conferences, showing 1,000 rounds of ammo. The police going, look, look at the ammo. And you've got these pop head zombies out there that go, guns in a slave's hand. And then they go to jail with no crime committed. I mean, that's what I'm talking about here. Okay, I said I'd just read the headlines. Look at these financial headlines. States warn of $2 trillion pension shortfall. CNBC. Without aid, Detroit School District may close half of its schools. That's the entire city, Detroit public school system. Detroit News. China is lending and it hits new heights. Again, China's lending hits new heights as they buy up the planet. Here's another one, a strategy to straddle the planet. Financial Times of London. Oil prices over 100, not unrealistic. Iran. Obama wants to shed rules that hurt job growth. That's kind of like they wanted to build a border fence that they never intended to build. Just all talk. Yeah, his carbon taxes will really get the economy going. Missiles off target in major Taiwan drill. Is the Fed broke? Economic Policy Journal. The Fed is only the receivership arm of the OECD, the Organization of Cooperative Development, of Economic and Cooperative Development, and it itself is just a bankruptcy receivership arm. It bankrupts the nation while transferring the assets through the membrane to the global shareholders. So, no, we're broke, not the Fed. They've carried out the fraud successfully until we bring them to justice. Debt bondage, the economic treason of the banks, Bob Chapman. And it just continues from there. Here's some other important headlines. Hu Jintao set for lavish White House reception on state visit as he openly crows that the end of the dollar is nigh. The media lavishes and praises the authoritarianism. Continuing Stuxnet virus attack. Russia warns of Iranian Chernobyl and says that the country may have a Chernobyl-style disaster. Russian nuclear officials have warned of another Chernobyl-style nuclear disaster at Iran's controversial Bashir reactor because of the damage caused by the Stuxnet virus, according to the latest Western intelligence reports. Then we have, of course, another report dovetailing with that. Cyber attacks could cause global catastrophe. Coordinated attacks on critical computer systems could create a perfect storm with catastrophic global effects, a study found today. And guess who issued the study? And when they issue a study and directives, when they call for Homeland Security to be set up in every Western nation, when they call for federalization of schools, when they call for forced inoculations, when they call for global gun banning and gun control, when they call for higher taxes or a sales tax, you hear your politicians start jumping up and down. When they call for an NAU-SPP merger, North American Union, you start hearing the globalists push it. Who in this London Telegraph article tells us of the dangerous Stuxnet? Well, thank goodness. It's the OECD, who no one ever wants to discuss. The UN is just a little ceremonial debating society that's like one room in a giant palace of the OECD. A succession of multiple cyber attacks could become full-scale global shock. You know the Pentagon's setting up the grid to do this, and actually in their own war plans, they admit it. They war game taking the web down to know how to protect it. Oh, of course. They have to take it down before they initiate it under new Internet 2 with Internet ID, Internet taxes, and everyone will have to have a subdomain name on 100 corporations, 50 universities, and government websites. There'll be a spectrum of subdomains on Internet 2, and you will sign up with a licensure agreement waiving all of your rights. I mean, I knew this 8 years ago because it was all spelled out by the globalists at Internet 2 symposiums, and I'm the type of guy that'll sit around reading hundreds of pages of it. So it's all being prepared. But they're only doing it because of Stuxnet. The OECD that takes over the third world countries that took Europe into receivership at the end of World War II, the Ex-Im Bank, the IMF, the World Bank are just subsidiaries of it. The Federal Reserve is a subsidiary. A succession of multi-cyber attacks could become a full-scale global shock on par with a pandemic and the collapse of the world financial system. Oh, you're going to lose your bank account and your pension because of the internet and the cyber attackers. We've got, can you imagine every pensioner every person with their bank account screwed up, demanding that the government do something. You know, when you find out about data loss, over 80% of it, this is all admitted, is big banks. And the guy running the credit card machine there at the gas station, getting the numbers, and then he emails it or faxes it to his cousin in Pakistan or India or China or Eastern Europe, you know, all the famous places where they do it, Russia, Nigeria, and then they run scams with your credit cards. That's most of it. But notice the media is always, it's the internet, it's the internet, it's the internet, it's the internet doing it. Then you'll learn Bank of America gives away 3 million of its customers' data. And the whole system's designed, and the government builds all these back doors by law through Microsoft where this is all done so that we're going towards the thumbprint face scan to buy and sell. And they've announced it a few years ago, and it's now in the operating system. You can pull it up. Microsoft, its new versions, have Internet ID built in. And you can pull that up. And how is it going to be? Keyboards with a thumbprint. And for web transactions, a digital photo to authenticate. That'll fix all the problems. It'll also track everywhere you go and what you do. And Bill Gates is calling for all children of the world to be enrolled in this global biometric system. And don't think you're just going to wear a mask. When you go through the body scanner, they get your 360 body scan. So now they have passive cameras that shoot radio waves like sonar through your clothes and scan your body at even hundreds of yards away. They admit in Wired Magazine. The intel I've got is they've got satellites that do it now, not just off your heat resonance, not biometric from a face scan, a heat resonance from your shoulders and the top of your head, but also off of your walk. They have a biometric calculation between the shoulders, the elbows, the knees, the feet, and the movement of the head. And off of that triangulation calculation, they have 100% biometric scan off of your walk from satellite. That's confirmed. But you notice the Germans just got caught 3 weeks ago. Oh, I'm afraid they didn't launch all those new satellites to track global warming. It was a government, U.S. government, NATO deal. They are infrared biometric scanners to identify personnel on the ground. So I said I'd read through some of the headlines. That's quite a few of them, but here it is. Cyber attacks could cause global catastrophe. The Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development said. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said. Contingency plans to recover systems should be put in place, and cybersecurity policy should encompass the needs of all citizens and not just central government facilities. Well, that sounds like they want everybody to be safe. Well, when you read the Cybersecurity Act, which is a mirror image of this, just like the Food Safety Act says, in the Farm and Food Safety Act, it says Codex Alimentarius, UN implementation of treaty. Well, when you read what the OECD and the UN's calling for, it's exactly what is in the admitted Cybersecurity Act, where it says IT companies that serve 100 or more customers must get government certification and have government hardware placed in their chain to monitor for security threats. And what did this just say? Oh, the government has got to protect you, and you've got to upload all your personal data and protect it in a government cloud computing access system. See, everything now is going to be terminals that tie into this big server CDN system where you've just got your own little tablet, and you won't even be able to buy a tower at the stores. You can try to special order one. You can try to keep servers in your business, in your office, but the web is now being engineered, this is all admitted, where your stuff won't even be able to access in the near future the new systems they're rolling out. And they say, if you don't want to go along with the changes, that's fine. You can live in some type of digital ghetto is the term they use. Remember that program that they produced in England for children showing them the future, where you only get meat on your birthday, everything you do is tracked, you have a travel allotment, everything is surveilled. This is what's being taught now. Total authoritarianism. All these government officials from Al Gore right down to Hansen, the head of the Goddard Space Center, saying, we want authoritarianism. We're going to have one child. This is it. We're doing it for your own good. And don't look for the Republicans to fire him. No, 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 no. They're now getting their power back, and so they are going to enjoy the spoils. Now, there are some good people in there. The numbers of patriots are growing, but don't think overnight this is all going to be reversed. We've got to stay angry, stay focused. Again, that encompass the needs of all citizens, not just central government facilities, the report said. What should concern policymakers are combinations of events, two different cyber events occurring at the same time, or a cyber event taking place during some other form of disaster or attack. In that eventuality, the perfect storm conditions could exist. And so they go on to call for the Global Cybersecurity Command interfaced with NATO and the major governments. They'll keep us safe from the Stuxnet launched by the U.S. and Israel publicly. We told you that in September. Now here it is admitted. Stuxnet, another conspiracy theory, turns out to be true. And Paul Watson goes through all the different blogs that attacked us and others and all the big newspapers that said it was preposterous that Israel and the U.S. had launched the Stuxnet. But we could see the motive, we could see the history, and we could also see the chutzpah and the bravado and the arrogance out of the U.S. and Israel when they would refuse to deny they were involved in September. Doesn't take a Goddard rocket scientist to know that Chinese-style tyranny is not a good idea, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know when you see all those signs, and they love to antagonize Iran. It's part of the policy. I remember Bush 4 years ago had the White House put a press release out about how they were funding 4 freedom fighter groups to attack Iran, and 3 of the 4 groups were top al-Qaeda, including, at the time, the #2 in al-Qaeda, commanding attacks inside Iran. And then our media had the nerve to say Iran was running al-Qaeda when al-Qaeda is the opposite of the Shiite-run state, and they hate each other even more than they hate the West. But again, that's from actually knowing who the players are. I know who the basic players are in Islam, just like you know who the players are in the Dallas Cowboys. But see, they know you don't know about that, some of you new listeners out there, so they just lie to you. Oh, Iran, they're running al-Qaeda. I mean, they come out and tacitly admit they launched the attack, and 3.5 months later, well, this was early September, so I guess September, October, November, December. Yeah, we're talking almost 4 months later. Oh, the New York Times comes out and admits the entire thing. Schwarzenegger, gearing up to try to repeal the 22nd Amendment so he can be president, says, I was addicted to being the governor, he told the Austrian newspaper, Krone. Gotta love how he always does everything for Austria first, always gives them the first interviews, everything. Good, go back to Austria. It's a beautiful country, nice people, a lot of culture. Get out of my country. I'm not over in Austria running around talking about how I want to be a dictator and working with Ken Lay, robbing people. Oh, yeah, he was heavily involved in all that. And he just talks about how I lost 200 million, 70 million on movie losses. I've looked at Schwarzenegger's wealth. It's gone way up. You don't think he wasn't in there because he was heavily involved in business deals, including Enron? What a joke. Well, it doesn't matter. Anybody's taking as much steroids as you, pal. You better hope they get that life extension technology perfected real fast, because you look like you're about to keel over and fall over. Now, how much makeup they put on you and how they prop you up with that arrogant authoritarian smile on your gun-grabbing, open-border-loving, New World Order face. But I'll say to you, Auslander Reich, get out of my country. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. I'm going to get into really key news straight ahead on somebody in Chile, a real patriot.
Don't want no shackles on.
Again, I had some pride yesterday. Pride in the strength and the courage and the focus and the spirit that you can hear in this voice. And we've sent a communique via the fella's YouTube channel. We have it, the video linked up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When we linked to it, it had about 200 viewers yesterday. Now it's had close to 100,000. I would guess this video will end up getting several million views. It's Rockefeller-owned. Chileans tell him he will fail. And that's what they're saying in Spanish to him, but they're also speaking in English. And I was very proud of the fact that when I went to this YouTube channel of the man who confronted them, and he's there on the YouTube channel saying, yes, I'm the guy who uploaded the video. I'm the guy that confronted him, David Rockefeller, and also Mr. Eastman, one of the richest men in South America, and Australian elitist Edward McClure, who served as president of the League of Nations. It just goes on and on here. You can read the whole breakdown at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Rockefeller-owned. Chileans tell him he will fail. Together with his good old friend, Edward Eastman, Mr. Rockefeller takes a quick vacation almost every year in the south of Chile. Both are well known for working with the CIA during the '73 coup against their president down there, and they killed hundreds of thousands. And, of course, Kissinger brags about that. He's wanted on war crimes in Spain for it. And manipulating public opinion through a newspaper called El Mercurio. Edwards is also known for being a descendant of Chilean elitist Edward McClure, who served as the president of the League of Nations from 22 to 23 and also ran the same newspaper. So here is a super high-powered, one of the most wealthy media magnates in South America, super high-powered mafia, Mr. Easton, helping set up with David Rockefeller's grandfather, the first mode of the UN, a big eugenicist, being confronted, and it's just so powerful. And then I go to the guy's channel. He's got our films up there. He's translated into Spanish. He's got all this great work he's doing, and to know that we're influencing great people in Chile, they're influencing us here. Together, we're all nationalistic, pro-family, pro-sovereignty. But it's also a global movement against global tyranny. It takes a global movement to fight their global tyranny, but it's independent. But it's a manifesto of liberty as we all basically think along the same lines. And it's that idea that's bulletproof. Here is the powerful audio and video of the confrontation.
Rockefellers, come back. We don't want your new world order, you know? Leave Chile right now. Leave Chile. You are not... You're killing a lot of people! You're killing a lot of people! Leave here! Leave Chile right now! Leave Chile! Leave Chile! We don't want your world government! Leave Chile right now! Leave Chile, okay? Leave Chile! Your family is the most disgusting in the world, you know? Leave here! Leave! You also, you're a traitor to Chile! Mr. Agustin Edwards, you're a traitor to Chile, okay? You're a traitor to Chile! What you're doing right now, okay? 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 You know everything. You know everything. You're participating with him. You're participating with him in this. Your world government will fail, okay? It will fail! Your world government will fail! Will fail! Will fail! You know it! Leave Chile right now! We don't want you here! We don't want your disgusting things here! Leave Chile now!
You gotta love it. We don't want you here, you disgusting creature. And by the way, Rockefeller admittedly ran the takeover of Chile and death squads that conservatively killed tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands were put in prison or disappeared. So here's a guy in a country that still isn't too free talking to a literal Hitler visiting his country who's committed a Holocaust. That's real courage. Coming up in about 30 minutes, we've got conservative icon Phyllis Schlafly, head of the Eagle Forum, joining us. Talk about, is it going to be meet the new boss, same as the old boss with these Republicans going into Congress? What do we do about the globalist agenda? I'm going to ask her about globalist control of the conservative movement in this country. How far does it go back? Does it go back to Barry Goldwater or before? We're going to have an important talk with her coming up in 30 minutes. Look forward to that. And then in studio, we're going to have Dr. Wakefield, who's been on all the big morning shows, Good Morning America, Dr. Andrew Wakefield. They're trying to run this hoax that his research on autism, the vaccine link, is a hoax. If you just joined us, I could watch that Rockefeller confrontation over and over again. You see the vampiric leer of Nosferatu, Herr Rockefeller. If you have to point at one man who's been a more tireless agent of Mordor, of evil, it has to be David Rockefeller. I mean, he's CFR, Trilateral Commission, UN programs, biological diversity assessments, carbon taxes, the entire China we see today, this giant murdering monster with sports stadium executions and total control and one-child policies. It was David Rockefeller who went there, set the deal up, writes about it in his memoirs, praises Mao Zedong. Just as the head of Goddard Space Center, James Hansen, says we need a Chinese authoritarianism. He says totalitarianism is good. And what do we hear from Dr. Eric Pianka, biology department? At least he was the head years ago. I don't know what he is now. What do we have with Peter Singer? What do we have with Ted Turner? What do we have with Jacques Cousteau? What do we have with Prince Philip? What do we have with Prince Charles? What do we have with just every day or two? Watson's got a new article where some top IPCC head at the UN says we need authoritarianism, get rid of freedom, carbon tax everyone, one-child policies. And this Hansen goes on to say, we'll have no economy, in Watson's article, quoting him, we'll have no economy until we embrace the Chinese model of totalitarianism and carbon taxes, and that tariffs should be levied globally against the U.S. if we don't go along with it. Meanwhile, China, who he says is the model, doesn't have these carbon taxes. I mean, he knows they're imploding our economy, and now they're going to dance around on the ashes of our economy, blaming it because we didn't accept carbon taxes. Well, California has, and look how fast they're going down the toilet bowl, how fast they're circling the drain. I mean, these guys relish authoritarian oppression. They relish forced abortion. They endorse it. And it's their little enjoyment, their little power trip over you when they go to the mall, and they always write about how they detest their fellow Americans, or when they go walk down the street, or they go to Times Square, and they just survey the public, and they write about this, how disgusting we are, how filthy we are. But they've got that little power trip. They're not stopping us from what we're putting the Teflon in the pans, that if your parrot is sitting 10 feet from it, it'll drop dead. It's so deadly. They're not going to stop us from that fluoride in that water when we're also putting it in the foods now. They're not going to stop us from the vaccines. Oh, God. Bill Gates, oh, we've given him so much power. He's patenting all these mosquitoes that'll forcibly deliver it. Oh, we're going to sterilize them. We're going to take their power to breed. Oh, we've got this instinct to want to dominate and control you. And oh, we're control freaks. Oh, the religion of control freakdom. They love looking at you with hate. And I've seen globalists, I've read their writings, I've studied them. When they see a family, a good-looking family with healthy, happy kids, they just recoil with hate. And they've always just got like black teeth. And even if they're young, they always look like David Rockefeller or this Hansen guy. They're always like Emperor Palpatine. We'll be seeing the degenerative effects on your children soon enough. I control everything, you fools. You don't even know we're poisoning your water. They'll never wake up. I mean, it's just, why do we let this scum perch on us and vomit on us? During the break, I was watching Fox News. They had on the screen, U.S. owes more than $1 trillion to China. And then it was Obama with hat in hand at the table being bossed around by the Chinese. The globalists have worked so hard to get us into debt. They've worked so hard to overextend us as an empire. While the Rupert Murdoch media overseas demonizes us, domestically it leads the charge of patriotism, leading us into the trap, leading us into the setup. Then the controlled left here at home demonizes America instead of demonizing the globalists that have engineered this. And the vast majority, over 90% of this debt is not owed because of Social Security or because of even the military budget. It is owed in derivatives because we've signed on to pay off the 1.5 global quadrillion derivatives, 1,500 trillion, and that was a year ago. That's an average of what a group of economists said here on air. Again, the Washington Post a few months ago said 600 plus trill, which would be a little more than 1/3 of what Tarpley says, 1.5 quadrillion, 1,500 trill. But many other mainline economists say it's over a trill. 1,000 trill. It's hard to even get my mind around these numbers. And some economists say it's over 2,000 trill. See, I can't even say this properly. Many economists say it's 1,500 trillion. The Washington Post says it's around 650 trillion. Webster Tarpley says it's 1,500 trillion. But whether it's 650 trillion or 1,500 trillion or 2,000 trillion, we don't owe it. They talk about our national debt being 14.5 trillion. The national debt is $14.5 trillion. Bloomberg reported over a year ago, it was in January of last year, $28 trillion. In late 2009, they reported 23.7 trillion. You can just say 23.7 trillion Bloomberg. It'll come up for you. Then an additional 5+ trillion was spent. And then they stopped giving the numbers. And they won't tell Congress or anybody else. So we owe 14 trillion and change on the Social Security and all the rest of this. But we're signed on in derivatives to over 1,000 trillion. And they endlessly talk about the 14+ trillion. 14.2, 14.5, 14.6, depending on how you slice it. Why aren't we having a discussion about the 1.5 quadrillion, 1,500 trillion, or 600 trillion, however you want to slice it? Let's just say it's only 640-something trillion, like the Washington Post said. Okay, it's only 600 trillion. Almost all of that is not government debt. It's globalist debt. It's made up derivatives they sold. They sold it to individuals and corporations and governments. And it came out in Iceland. It came out in Greece. It's coming out in Ireland. In the news, they'll admit, oh, almost all of this debt is owed by the central banks and the private banks themselves, but Ireland's going to pay it off for them for stability. Iceland is going to pay it off for stability. Greece is going to pay it off and sell their 600+ islands for stability. And then you read, oh, this billionaire pension fund raider, he's getting this Greek island as payment from the Greek government. This guy, sells fraud, and then they go, okay, here's our island, thanks for the fraud. And then now the president, who likes to bow to the Saudi king and likes to bow to the Queen of England and he's never found a royal he doesn't want to bow to because he knows who the real power is. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the British, the Dutch royals, the Saudi royals. The Imperial House of Japan still owns most of the country. You notice when our government went and took them over and took that, they immediately went in and made a deal with the royals and then pulled out. Because the Queenie over there doesn't want to set the precedent of royals ever falling. That's why a lot of times royals would kill their own families, but they would never kill their cousins across the English Channel or vice versa, or in Austria. They would never kill their cousins in Russia because that's dangerous. You start letting royals die, you exile them. You don't allow royal blood to be spilled. Napoleon declared himself a royal emperor. You notice they exiled him twice. You don't kill royalty. Never. And they believe it's their divine right to do this to us because we sit here and take it. We sit here and we take it. And so now they're teaching us, and they've dispatched the Federal Reserve, thousands of representatives, to colleges and high schools to go and speak to your children or to speak to your young adults who you pay to send to college to be brainwashed about how great the Federal Reserve is. And there's all these PSAs. Don't be against the Federal Reserve. You may be with the Tucson shooter. Oh, don't be against the Federal Reserve. You may be in a MIAC Homeland Security report. Oh, let's send the FBI to your house to ask, you've been writing against the Federal Reserve. Are you planning on something? And the Federal Reserve's federal security guards in Kansas City would come a half mile down the road and appear to my guys videotaping it from a hilltop and with hands on the side of their firearms. This made the Kansas City Star. And say, You will not videotape. Leave this area of Kansas City. And my guy said, well, you have no jurisdiction. You're security guards. And they put their hands on their guns and they said, you want to? And my guys followed orders. They left. Aaron started arguing with them, but I've seen the video. You've seen it. We've posted it. Just let everybody see the tyranny. See, it's all, oh, you represent foreign bankers raping us? Oh, you say here in the Chinese dictatorship of America, where we're owned by the communist Chinese, as the #1 owners, #2, the private Federal Reserve that set up China? They're like, oh, you're killing millions of your people? You're sterilizing women? Unlimited cash. Oh, we love you. And just all over the news every day, China, China. They know how to deal with protesters. They know how to deal with political dissidents. They chop out their organs and sell it to computer company executives. You don't hear about China and authoritarianism anymore. You don't hear about China being a threat anymore. All you see is them having our stealth fighters and our missiles. Because America is done. They're removing the wealth from here. They set this up. They designed it. They've got the police trained to hate libertarians and conservatives and gun owners. And they're leaving us with an ocean of dumbed-down control freaks looking for power, and they can't even get jobs at McDonald's. So they've been battle-hardened overseas in torture, death, murder, and all of it, and they're coming to have their blood feast upon us. They're coming to have their way with us. We are between a rock and a hard place. I mean, just where they're openly on the news, Chris Matthews, they're breaking our will right now. They're trying. White people are crackers and trash. Trying to invoke whites to become racial and have everybody else see themselves as racial, so we all fight with each other. The elite are so desperate, they're going, pull out the cracker card. And they've already said inward, 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 and anybody who doesn't like big government or wants to keep their guns hates black people and is burning crosses secretly. If that doesn't work, try to sick minorities on what's left of Western culture. Tell them crackers are bad. Tell them it's good to go after cracker. I mean, all of this is scripted to get us fighting with each other right at this point where we all come into this global government collapse that's been engineered. And we have a nation of arrested development males who act like between 5 and 10-year-olds. It is seen to be manly to only like sports and acting tough and not getting involved. The women are, on average, completely worldly tarts. They traded their feminine power and their motherhood and their honor to dress like prostitutes and behave like them. And now the country is falling. All by design. They had to make us weak before they did it, and now they've got the U.S. just sliding around in the mud before the communist Chinese bloodthirsty butchers of all history. The absolute world record killers. And our country just groveling in the mud, being taught that we were bad, and thank goodness the communist Chinese are here to sell us, and thank goodness the Federal Reserve is here, and thank goodness NATO is here, and thank goodness the 10 FEMA regions are here, and thank goodness there's telescreens going up everywhere where the government gives us announcements telling us how they make the grass grow and how they make the birds sing. Thank goodness for them. Unless we recognize the type of hardcore authoritarian tyranny we're going into, and the leaders everywhere praising authoritarian tyranny and making it fashionable for the left that it's some type of environmental, cult they're part of. On the right, an anti-terror cult. As the Club of Rome said, they'll have a right-wing attack on freedom and the anti-terror movement, and then they'll have a left-wing attack on freedom via the environmental fascism. And they're now doing it. We're going to go to break and come back and get into some more news. And then we've got the head, the founder of the Eagle Forum, Phyllis Schlafly, joining us. We're going to get into what's happening with China, more on Stuxnet, more on these calls for authoritarian tyranny, more on the economy, the pension funds going belly up. Don't worry, the bankers are getting rid of our AAA rating. They'll have higher-priced loans for us, like Nigeria, who borrowed $1 billion and is paid over $50 billion on that one loan and still owes 50-plus bill. Oh, losing that credit rating. In fact, the Chinese have already downgraded our credit rating. Oh, the communist Chinese, who just 50 years ago couldn't even feed themselves, now running everything because the globalists sold us on the cheap Chinese slave goods. They sold us on globalism and NAFTA and GATT, and like idiots, the public took the bait. And now, like a little fish, we're in the net going in the boat, and the New World Order fat cats are going, I like fish. And it's up on Infowars.com. It's the advertisement, the trailer for a Frontline piece that asks, are we safer? Tracking Baltimore's motorist, are we safer? And the trailer, again, is up at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. I want to play this and then come back and give you, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. Or as Paul Harvey, God bless his soul, would say. This will be old news for you, but it's new news for the lemmings, as they're told about face scanning cameras and the license plate readers, and it hooked up to government systems, because it's not just key government installations. It's a nationwide grid, even on dirt roads, the middle of nowhere, hooked in, scanning your license plates. But I have the LA Times, where in California, over 1 million government license plates are exempt. And I'm going to have Watson do an article on this tomorrow. So government's exempt, and DynCorp and Halliburton can be caught running giant child kidnapping rings. They can bring in hundreds of billions in narcotics. I was reading the Bloomberg yesterday where just one U.S. bank had $300+ billion in drug money. I mean, you know, it's $500 billion a year. And you really think some guys in a cave in Afghanistan are running it, or your local crack house is running that? No, it's admitted. It's the government and the big banks. And so these scanners are to make sure they can carry out their crimes. Or if somebody saw the government snatching your kid because a Saudi Arabian wants them or something, it's one of the big, buyers of them. Well, they'll be able to tell, uh-oh, this guy saw it. Just go ahead and send a hit team to that neighbor's house. He saw us with our snatch team. So these are so they can carry out robbing and murder and evil against us. So the equivalent of Stalin, Hitler, and Mao rolled into one now has this Pentagon. Oh, and then they lie and say in this piece that this was developed in Iraq and Afghanistan. MIT bragged years ago, over a decade ago. This was all tested in the U.S. 15 years ago from Indiana to Texas on the highways, deployed, and then used in Afghanistan and Iraq, and is now being augmented here. And they admit it. I mean, this is a military grid against us, okay? Military doesn't belong to us. It's there to ship in cocaine and heroin and ship out little kids. Here's the clip.
In Maryland, they've even started taking pictures of license plates.
What are we doing here?
The system we're using has 2 cameras. It's constantly taking pictures, observing the tags, allowing the system to record them, and check them against the database.
Suspended or revoked registration.
This technology, used by U.S. military forces on the streets of Baghdad, has migrated to the streets of Baltimore.
With the license plate reader system, if we were to get that information, we can then go into the system and see where else this car has been.
The software with the system, when it sees what it thinks is a license plate, it will read it using OCR, optical character recognition, and make a cross-check against a database. We're running
surveillance cameras at vital institutions are also photographing license plates and adding them to the database.
Maybe nobody called it in when they were at Fort Detrick or Aberdeen Proving Ground or at Bolling Air Force Base. But the license plate readers will tell us they were there and when they were there and when they passed through. That's a pattern. That's something we'd want to know about.
And they've gone one step further. Smile. Cameras are everywhere.
We are very big on CCTV. We believe that it is a force multiplier, that it is an effective way not only to provide greater security in open spaces,
but to get the narcotics in.
Evidence Times Square, but also it's a much more effective way to guard approaches to tunnels, bridges, and other sorts of static targets.
Oh, yeah.
One of 3 new stories next time on Frontline. Watch online or on air beginning January 18th.
Okay. So I guess that starts today. Now, in all these shows in the last decade where they show you, oh, Florida town, everyone that goes in has their plates run by the cameras. Or, oh, in a British town, everybody that comes in. You notice that they drive around and they're seeing stolen cars, you name it, and they're not stopping them. In fact, when your car gets stolen, you can't even get the police to respond. These things are to control the people. And they all hook into the threat fusion centers, and it's to learn your associations. See, the Stasi would put a radioactive isotope on the floors of apartments to track people by their footprints to learn who was meeting and what was going on. Now they just track you over your iPhone, your Android. They track you by satellite. They track you by your license plate. And they're total criminals that are doing it. To go over this Fox headline from yesterday, Tea Party faces challenges as GOP gains stronger control. And it just goes into how the big mainline GOP is going right back to their regular globalist arrogance. What do you expect? So we'll talk to the founder and head of the Eagle Forum coming up if that pans out. But I've had her on over the years a few times. If this doesn't pan out today, we'll just set her up for a full hour in the near future. I want to continue with what I was just saying and going over. You know, if that sounds hardcore to you, where I'm talking about our government, our military, bringing in narcotics, it's in plain view. They were caught in Vietnam. They've been caught over and over again in the 1980s and 90s. There's been congressional hearings on it. This isn't low-level military men and women who are compartmentalized and most of them doing important jobs. It's that at the top and under the national security umbrella, NATO is on record, Interpol is on record, the Pentagon, every major branch, the high-level brass in just total evil. And when you're in the business of killing people and breaking things, and when in the military, going back thousands of years, you might sacrifice 500 horsemen to lead out the main enemy force. And you give the order to the horsemen, the cavalry, men you even know to go off and die. And so that attitude of human life being cheap or even worthless just permeates. So if DynCorp and Halliburton can make money, first on stupid teenage girls they trick and pick up and fly out of Central Asia, out of Eastern and Central Europe, why not move on to little kids? And you can pull up Chicago Tribune, you can pull up BBC, UN, sex trafficking, DynCorp, Halliburton caught human trafficking, and you'll read, just as a footnote, oh, and of the million-plus children trafficked out of Europe every year, the UN estimates, it's the UN itself and these big contractors that are doing it. I mean, this is a big, big business. And it's just, that's the way it is. We're the good guys. Our president wears an American flag lapel. And see, these are the issues that the big mainline conservatives won't touch, the liberals won't touch. And I, for one, am just sick of it. Nobody is safe with these people running our society. No one's safe. Not your pension funds, not your health, not our future. I mean, these people have hated America from the beginning. They have done everything they can to tear down our culture, to dumb us down, to destroy our families, to turn us against each other. The global social engineers have bragged how they hated the Christian ethic, how they hated the family, how they wanted to get rid of it. And they didn't do it because they were offering something trendy and fun and enlightening and empowering. They did it because they wanted you to be isolated and weak. Even if you're an atheist, you know, the point is, it was the Christian Protestant pilgrim work ethic that wasn't perfect, but compared to every other culture in the world, produced unlimited technology, unlimited wealth. And now it's all gone. We don't have it anymore. We are a bunch of dumbed-down sloths, myself included, who've got to rediscover the spirit of liberty that empowered this country and made it so great. Not just because liberty is wonderful, but because tyranny is so horrible. This is a hot tyranny we're going into. There's been a cold war against our freedoms for a long time. But now you can see it. The war drums aren't over the hill. They're now right in amongst us. And this tyranny is unfolding around all of us each and every single day. I wanted to take a few minutes out before we get Phyllis Schlafly on to encourage listeners to realize that just because you've known about this for 30 years or 20 years or 5 years doesn't mean your friends and family do. But now they know something's wrong. They're awakening. Now is the time to reach out to people with films like The Obama Deception on DVD. Get it at Infowars.com. Make copies of it. Air it on your local access TV. Don't screw around. Jump through the hoops. Find other producers that are already got shows. Get them to air it. Do whatever it takes. Don't screw around. Get the job done. Even little towns, you'll reach hundreds and hundreds of people every time it airs. Big cities, hundreds of thousands. Because people are surfing the cable channels. They'll stop on something like The Obama Deception. A lot of folks are taking action. We're getting reports of big TV stations all over the country. People are buying time. They're not waiting for orders from headquarters. They're going to the sound of the guns. They're airing Endgame. They're airing Invisible Empire. They're airing What in the World Are They Spraying? It's not one of my films, but I hear it's airing. They're airing The Obama Deception. They're airing Fall of the Republic. It's having an effect. And keep doing it. Get Endgame. Get Invisible Empire. Get What in the World Are They Spraying with the chemtrails. Get The Obama Deception. We've got a deal still running where you can get 5 of my films. 5. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. 5 for $24.95. That's less than $5 a piece. Get them out to everybody. And that little amount of profit we make allows this operation to be funded. You're also always welcome to go to the online video bookstore shopping cart, and there's a donation button if that's the way you want to give right there to fund this operation. Also, all of our great sponsors. But the T-shirts, the books, the films, those are super effective because you're not just funding this operation. If you give us a donation, you are actually, which helps get the websites and the films and the workout, you know that when you get a DVD and make 100 copies or even just 10 copies or 1,000, whatever the case is, and you hand them out to people, you know you're having an effect and you're participating in it out there, growing your liberty muscles, growing your activism muscles, engaging with more people, and not just getting yourself more limber like a boxer politically who is more accustomed to talking to folks, but you're also getting other people more accustomed to talking about politics and setting and lighting those bushfires in the minds of men and women everywhere. I remember I was never that nervous if a bully started a fight with me. And I was never that nervous going and talking to a girl and asking her out to a movie because the girls were so pretty and their hair and their eyes and their lipstick that I was like an animal when I was a teenager. I wasn't, but I mean I didn't really have a lot of emotional hang-ups when it came to being nervous. But I still did when I was trying to sell somebody something. Or when I was just calling up about to come in for a job interview at a gas station. And I see adults now, and you see those signs of concern. You see adults when they have to call somebody in business, they're nervous before they do it. I've done it so much, it's like automated. It's not even confidence. It's just that I've done it so much. And in fact, it's almost like an overconfidence where I'm like halfway asleep sometimes on air. I'm excited I'm on air, but I'm not excited where I'm nervous, and so I'm not even as focused as I should be is what I'm saying. I mean, I'm almost too far on the other extreme. My point is get out there, talk to people, get accustomed to it, get things done, don't be timid. You're engaged in an emergency operation to awaken people and to cause a splash and a stir peacefully to get the word out at city council, at county commissioners meetings. Most of those are aired on local TV or on cable. You can go speak to them there. You can read for 3 minutes about fluoride, read for 3 minutes about the wars, talk for 3 minutes about the threat fusion centers, the federalization, talk for 3 minutes about the face scanning cameras, talk for 3 minutes about my films or other films or websites. All of you should go get your own YouTube channels and start politically speaking. So what if the first time your audio's not that good and the video's blurry and you stumble around? My first year at Access TV in 1995, I was doing it by myself. I didn't have anybody in the studio to help me. So I just did it in the control room with a camera, and I'd turn a light on, and I'd all be up there, you know, with a fisheye look, ranting about the New World Order. But I had to warn people. They had bills in the legislature to try to take our guns. They had bills in the legislature to take our farmland. The feds and the UN were doing things that had to be resisted. I had to get on air. I had to warn people. I didn't intend for any of this to happen. I just knew I had to resist them. And look at the success I've had. Am I perfect? Do I have all the answers? No. But I'm real. And that's what matters. And again, we've got to get involved in this fight. We've got to use the best, most truthful, most accurate, most well-done tools we've got in the info war. And that's films like Invisible Empire that I produced, directed by Jason Burmis, the seminal Endgame Blueprint for Global Enslavement, films we carry like What in the World Are They Spraying, films like Terror Storm. They're all available at Infowars.com. You can also go to PrisonPlanet.tv, a literal arsenal in the info war. Thousands of different interviews, tens of thousands of total shows, now almost 4 years of video archives of the show, 7 years of audio archives, all of my films, expanded extras, all these big exclusive interviews, uploading multiple ones a week. Joel Skousen, Chuck Baldwin this week, Russell Means, I mean, at Wounded Knee, shot, beautiful, high death, powerful, vaccine issues, tyranny, every issue you can imagine, all of it covered in detail. And you can go in there and burn it to disk, download it, share it with people, PrisonPlanet.tv. We've got another week or so, a little more than a week for you to get 5 months free, and then that special will end, PrisonPlanet.tv. But your purchase of the membership, again, makes the broadcast possible, everything we do here possible, PrisonPlanet.tv. Now, continuing here with the news, this needs to be stood up against. NASA's Hansen imposed Chinese totalitarianism on America. Totalitarian thugs love China. They love its authoritarian government and absolute political power. One such thug is climatologist James Hansen. This is a Kurt Nimmo article at PrisonPlanet.com. Hansen thinks America needs to adopt Chinese authoritarianism in order to force climate change down the throats of the American people. And then he has the quotes about how great China is and how we need to go with their system and how they've got it all straight. Just like David Rockefeller wrote those editorials for the New York Times saying how great Mao Zedong was after it was all over the news that he was a mass murderer, and even the Chinese government had decried it. He came out and defended it. He goes on to say that China and Europe need to impose carbon tariffs on us if we don't accept it. And he goes on to praise it. And then we have quotes here. In China, thought reform or thought control is considered the goal. It is psychological and spiritual submissiveness, often achieved through violence. It is the envy of totalitarian thugs around the world. And it goes on here that James Hansen should be promptly removed from his position at the head of NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies.